Stormblood was the second expansion for Final Fantasy XIV. It was released in the summer of 2017 for PS4 and PC. At this point, the PS3 version of 14 was set to be terminated, but a free platform upgrade was provided to those players. Also, as of this video, Stormblood has recently been added to the free trial. So now you can play all the way up to the end of Stormblood and its patches, and all job classes that were introduced in Stormblood or older can be leveled up to 70. Kind of an insane deal. It's still a pretty big time sink, but that's still basically 3 games worth of content free of charge. Just like with Heavensward, the rest of this video is going to contain spoilers, so this is your warning. If you're still here, I'm assuming you've either played already or you don't care, so let's continue. So where were we? Oh, right. Ilberd led an attack on Baelsar's wall. We took the bait. He summoned a primal, Shinryu. It was too strong. We had to send the Omega weapon after it. The fight ended in a draw, with both Shinryu and Omega nowhere to be found. Ida's real name is actually Lise, and the Garlean Empire has interpreted all of this drama as a declaration of war. So, yeah, now we're here. So since we've already been pushed into war with the Empire, the Eorzean Alliance decides we might as well lock all the way in and liberate Ala Mhigan, the nearby city-state that's currently under Imperial occupation. It's also the home of Rhalgr, Ilberd, and Lise and her family used to live there too, though Lise was very young and didn't spend much time there. There is an Ala Mhigan resistance led by Commander Conrad Kemp, and we all agree to work together to free Ala Mhigan from the Empire. The resistance has their base set up at Rhalgr's Reach, which is also one of the 2 new hub areas that are available to you during the expansion. We carry out a couple missions, which helps to strengthen the army's resolve, as well as recruit new people to the cause. Unfortunately, things go bad pretty quickly. The Empire launches a surprise attack on Rhalgr's Reach, which deals a severe blow to the Alliance since most of their forces were elsewhere doing other things. The camp was wide open. The Empire was also in collaboration with the Skulls, a group of rogue Ala Mhigans who, well put simply, were raised with an Imperial upbringing and work against their own kind, usually in exchange for education, citizenship, etc. They help to enforce the Empire's will whenever the Imperial soldiers aren't around, and their leader is a girl named Fordola. And just keep her in mind for now, because she is relevant later. Anyway, the Empire and the Skulls carry out their assault. Lots of people die. Plenty more get injured, including some major characters. I forgot to mention, by now the plot armor does start thinning out a bit. It's good for you, the player, though, because you're introduced to, in my opinion, the best villain in the entire game, at least so far. Zenos Yay Galvis. I probably butchered his name just as badly as he actually butchers characters in the game. He's the Emperor's son, and he was appointed as the Viceroy sometime during Heavensward, which leaves me no choice but to initiate what I'm going to start calling the Zenos glazing protocol. So Zenos steps up, fully armored, he's got his kitchen block of swords at the side, looks around, assesses the situation. Yes, now which of my fancy swords will I use to slaughter some idealistic do-gooders today? Eeny, meeny, miny, this one. Lise gets an eyeful of him and wastes no time engaging him, despite Conrad begging her to think twice. And unfortunately, the old man was right. So after Lisa's flawless 0 damage combo, Y'shtola jumps in just in time to shield her from the killing blow, and she gets mortally wounded instead. Well, there goes our screen time for this expansion. At this point, my group had managed to fight our way back to Rhalgr's Reach. Kryle and Alphino start tending to Y'shtola's wounds, leaving me to deal with Zenos, who's expressing a measure of excitement at the thought of finally being entertained. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm the Warrior of Light. You know, the champion of Eorzea, slayer of primals, dragons, and primal dragons. He's just another soldier. I've got this. I most definitely did not have it. And it was at that moment I realized why he was picked as 14's villain rep in Dissidia. I mean, yeah, he did break his sword in the process, but not before breaking every bone in my body. I'm pretty sure this makes Zenos the first villain, be it person, primal, or otherwise, to canonically defeat the Warrior of Light. So everyone is recovering from the battle, not quite sure where to go from here. Alphino mentions that before Zenos' recent promotion, he had conquered Doma, which if you remember is where Yugiri and all those refugees had come from. Doma had attempted a rebellion previously, and it obviously didn't work out. Oh, and fun fact, the reason Zenos uses katanas is simply because while he was fighting over in Doma, he just liked their fighting style, so Yeah, the man is a weeb. Anyway, if we can spark another uprising in Doma, it would hopefully divide the Empire's attention and spread their ranks just thin enough that rebellion would be manageable in both locations. Unfortunately, the Empire was not the only thing that would be spread thin due to this decision. This plan had an out-of-universe consequence too, because since Stormblood now has to divide its attention between two major locations, it makes the entire expansion feel a bit rushed. Some parts are abnormally slow, then it reaches a point where things start picking up, but then it feels like it moves too fast. You'll feel this sense of desperation as the conflicts in both locations almost feel like they're racing each other to come to a close, which, to be fair, is what the characters are actually trying to do, resolve things as quickly as they can with a minimal amount of drama. However, from the perspective of trying to immerse the player in each location, it kinda falls short. They just didn't give themselves enough time to produce this effect. An effect that was clearly felt in the previous two segments of the game. Anyway, all that aside, we're going to the Far East. Your character, Lise, Alice, and Tataru head off. You dock in Kugane, a major city close enough to Doma, and it serves as the second hub location for the expansion. They're both separated by the Ruby Sea, and we need to get permission to cross. A guy named Sorabun is the one who ultimately ends up helping us. He belongs to a beast tribe called the Kojin. They're basically Ninja Turtles. We also find Gosetsu again. Unfortunately, Yugiri isn't with him. She went off on her own to look for Hien, the current king of Doma, or he would be if circumstances were normal. To cross the Ruby Sea, we need to pay a group of pirates, the Confederacy, to pass. There are some complications, however. They have their hands tied with the Empire at the moment, and the Empire is currently collaborating with a group of Red Kojin. They're like the blue ones, just meaner. Also, yes, the other ones are called Blue Kojin despite being green. Make it make sense. Lastly, the Empire also has a governor who oversees Doma, Yotsuyu. And what's really interesting about her, besides her overt cruelty, is the fact that, much like Fordola and the Skulls back in Ala Mhigan, she is also someone who hates her own kind. It's not like she's reluctantly ruling over Doma, she relishes it and goes out of her way to make it as miserable for everyone as possible. However, these feelings, while by no means a justification, did not just develop out of thin air. The game does go into greater detail on why both Fordola and Yotsuyu feel this way, but we're not quite there yet. For now, all you need to know is that Gosetsu got captured by her after he tried to defend some Domans that she was torturing. Now that myself and the rest of the group have a pretty good idea of how seriously Yotsuyu takes her BDSM sessions, we make rescuing Gosetsu a top priority and ask the Confederacy for help. The Confederacy initially declines because they're scared shitless of pissing off the Empire even further, but we also offer to give them the opportunity they need to save the other captured Domans by dealing with the Red Kojin, and they agree. During our infiltration of the Red Kojin's base, they summon the first primal of this expansion, Susanoo. We revel in a pretty hectic trial, and then the Confederacy manages to free the village from Yotsuyu's men, which also gives us Gosetsu back. We soon meet the Doman Liberation Front, the official name of the resistance, and we finally meet back up with Yugiri again. As everyone is planning their next move, some bad news surfaces. It seems Zenos has caught wind of what we're trying to do, and he's headed back over to Doma to help flatten any resistance efforts. Yugiri insists on assassinating him, which everyone immediately tells her is a bad idea, but she goes anyway. And I go with her, knowing full well we're about to get our insides rearranged by this motherfucker, but hey, you can't say I wasn't loyal. To the surprise of absolutely no one, Zenos royally fucks us. Quite literally, because he's a prince. I actually managed to last a little bit longer than last time. Okay, I just realized the double meaning in those last few sentences. I'm not sorry. I'm not even gonna pause. Zenos decides to spare me in hopes that I get stronger. See, he's so nice. So we regroup again. It turns out that even though things look kinda bad on the surface, a good chunk of the Imperial forces have withdrawn from Doma over the years. One good, unified attack might be just enough to take the kingdom back. So we go looking for Lord Hien, because at this point he's our best chance at gathering everyone. So we head to the Azim Steppe, which is where he was last seen. The Azim Steppe is actually where the majority of the Zayla clan Aura come from, my character. I guess one of these days I should make up some sort of story or whatever as to why my character isn't familiar with the place. You do get some special dialogue if your character is a Zayla clan Aura, but regardless you are treated like an outsider. Understandably so, you weren't raised there. We managed to find Hien, and he's been hanging out here ever since the previous rebellion. He wants to ask the residents of the steppe to help with the rebellion, so he's going to enter the Naadam to win their favor. See, the Zayla are further divided into various tribes, and they will periodically hold the Naadam, in which they will battle each other, and the winning tribe gets ownership of the throne until the next one. Hien and I participate under the Mole tribe, who, ironically, if I remember correctly, is the weakest of all the tribes, but they win this time. Of course they did. They had me on the team. To top it all off, the Empire attempts to attack us while we're sorting this out, and a unified pushback against them firmly cements our new alliance. The Zayla clan will be helping us take back Doma. Now that we've got the numbers needed, it's time to put the plan into action, which Alphino was cooking up while all this was going on. The Doman militia and the Liberation Front rebels will fight on the ground. The Zayla clan will attack from the air, and Alphino, Alice, and some ninjas will disable the castle's force field. With that gone, the Confederacy and the Kojin can launch an additional assault from the sea. While all of this is going on, my character will infiltrate the castle and take out Yotsuyu. Also, for good measure, Hien wants to collapse the castle and drown it with Yotsuyu inside. Honestly, it sounds extreme, but I can't even blame him, especially considering how things actually end up playing out too. We get inside the castle, confront Yotsuyu, and she tells us her backstory. So Yotsuyu had a brother, and he was clearly the favorite. Actually, that's an understatement. Their parents loved him and hated her. Also, stick a pin in this too, because her brother makes an appearance later. Anyway, her brother was taken to the Empire to study. She was sold off to a nobleman, one who was very abusive at that. That transaction also helped Yotsuyu's parents to move into the Empire for a better life. Then the husband died, and she got sent to a brothel. At some point during that time, she was given the opportunity to become an Imperial spy, and of course she took it. Why wouldn't she? What the hell did she have to lose? The steady flow of intel helped the Empire conquer Doma, and Zenos appointed her as governor afterward. So yeah, no shit she hates other Domans. Does this justify all the horrible things she did to them as a group? No, but you can at least clearly see how she got here, since literally every single Doman that was close to her ruined her life. She was consistently exposed to the absolute worst that Doma had to offer. Anyway, after firmly stating that she's not sorry, Hien kills her, but it turns out she was just doing all that talking to buy time. The ceiling collapses and Gosetsu grabs a hold of it, urging everyone to get out while they still can. But Gosetsu, we can't leave you to die here. We went through all that trouble to rescue you earlier. Oh, that's okay. Look at me. I'm more than twice your size. I can handle it. It'll take a silver bullet to blow my back out. We barely make it out of the collapsing castle. The Kojin inspect the wreckage looking for survivors, but Gosetsu is nowhere to be found, nor Yotsuyu for that matter. Yeah, that sucks, we lost one. But hey, at least Doma's free again. Hien and Yugiri stay behind to help rebuild the kingdom, which leaves us with the other half of the plan, liberating Ala Mhigan. Commander Conrad recommends Lise take over as the new leader of the resistance because he's getting too old for this shit. Lise, at least initially, doesn't think she's quite cut out to lead an entire nation, which, no joke, might be the smartest thing she's ever said. There's another beast tribe that resides in the area, the Anata, who are these snake people. The skulls had been terrorizing them, and things reach a breaking point when Fordola kills the queen's daughter. They summon their own primal, Sri Lakshmi, hoping that the deity can resurrect the princess, which doesn't end up working out as intended. Alice tries to reason with the Anata, pointing out that a primal's main goal is to get its followers to collect large amounts of aether for itself, not to help them. Sri Lakshmi tempers all of the Anata in the room and attempts to do so to us. Probably would have made us permanent tier 3 subs too if I didn't come in with the built-in primal repellent. We defeat her and move on. While all of this is happening, the Eorzean Alliance has been busy claiming Imperial bases. We set our sights on their main camp, Specula Imperatoris. Unfortunately, this one does not go nearly as smoothly as the others. While everyone is fighting, someone fires a cannon from a nearby Imperial research facility. It hits the main tower, which causes it to fall and crush numerous people below, including Conrad. In his final moments, he pleads to Lise to take over as leader of the resistance, and this time she agrees. The Imperials stationed at the research facility are preparing to fire another shot, but a very familiar-looking dragoon shows up and disables the cannon before that can happen. Okay, it's clearly a Stydian. Meanwhile, Lise orders a strike team composed of her, myself, Alphino, Alice, and other various resistance members to bust into the research facility and avenge our fallen comrades. Or should I say, Fallen Conrad.
Oh, you are a dead man!
So it turns out Fordola was the one who gave the order for that attack, not caring that both the Imperials as well as her own skulls would be caught in the blast. Fordola has kind of been on a killing spree lately. She's been dialing up the brutality, trying to prove to Daddy Zenos that she's a good employee. She doesn't want to get laid off, because if you get laid off under Zenos' watch, the term severance takes on a whole new meaning. Lys and Fordola start fighting, but there's something different about Fordola. The bitch installed auto-evade before the fight because Lys can't get a single hit in. Even Alisay jumping in to help doesn't do much, and Fordola deals a critical blow to Alisay before retreating. As she's leaving, she informs us that Zenos has invited all of us to his royal hunt, as he puts it. Alphino and I take Alisay back to recover while Lys assembles some troops to head to the Ala Mhigan capital. At some point during our time in the Far East, the Empire had taken Kryl as prisoner. So Thancred, who's back by the way, I guess he took a backseat for most of this expansion too, starts planning out how we're gonna save her, while the remainder of the Alliance prepares to take back the capital city. We find out Kryl's whereabouts and I'm sent to go rescue her. Urianger, who also didn't do much this expansion, gives me a device he's made that should counter Fordola's new power. We confront Fordola, and this time, with the help of Urianger's tool, I manage to beat her. Fordola initiates the Zenos glazing protocol and reminds us that we're still no match for him.
Listen to you, talking like you've already won. Zenos is gonna tear you apart. He commands a power echoing that of the Icons.
What are you talking about?
The hunt, you stupid cow. I'm talking about the hunt! He said you'd come, and here you are, his willing prey. You and your friends are dead, just like mine. And all our misery, all our sacrifice, it was all for naught!
You see, Garleans, while they do have immense physical strength compared to most other people, cannot use magic. They experimented on Fordola in an attempt to circumvent this. Basically, Fordola's power seems to give her max evasion, but it's actually given her an artificial echo. And once they were finished experimenting on her, they gave Zenos that same ability, and more. Actually, this specific brand of artificial echo user is called a resonant. So yeah, it looks like I wasn't the only one who's been leveling up. Anyway, priorities. We launch our attack on the capital, with the Domans and Zayla clan even chipping in to help too. I confront Zenos inside of the castle. After a fierce battle, he leads me to the top of the castle, where we discover that Zenos had already found Shinryu and had him caged up here this whole time. I also want to take a minute to highlight the difference between Zenos and our previous Garlean antagonist, Gaius Van Baelsar. Gaius hated the Icons and wanted them exterminated. Zenos interprets that disdain as fear and thinks that Icons can be controlled and their power harnessed. He then does something interesting. He frees Shinryu, but uses his new abilities to take control of the Primal. I surprisingly managed to beat it. Really goes to show how strong the Warrior of Light is by this point. It wasn't too long ago that this thing was considered so terrifying and insurmountable that we had to put Papalymo on the chopping block just to stall it. Then go and wake up the Omega weapon, which was another creature that was hyped up to be a big deal, and it could only fight Shinryu to a draw. But now, here I am, going toe-to-toe with the thing. Cool. Shinryu's defeat kicks Zenos' consciousness back out, and he expresses satisfaction, believing that the strong should move forward while the weak be hunted. And since he was now the weaker one, he had no purpose left, or something like that. He called me his friend a few minutes before, and at first I thought he was joking, but in the aftermath of the battle, it dawned on me. The man probably was pretty lonely. It's his own fault though. The problem isn't that he doesn't socialize, people just don't end up living long enough to form lasting bonds with him. He's hard to hang out with because he tends to play rough. The others make it to the top of the castle just in time to see Zenos cut his own throat. You'll never take him alive. Zenos' death, however, means no more Imperial rule, which means Ala Mhigan has been liberated. You happy now, Ilberd? Can you see this from hell? Can you? We did it. Shut up now. Shinryu left behind Nidhogg's eyes, which I can't believe we just left up there. We learned nothing from last time, apparently. Fortunately, Estinian shows up sometime afterwards and snuffs out what little aether they had left. No more big angry dragon boys. Lys also has to leave the Scions now, since she's the new leader of Ala Mhigan. That by definition makes her not politically impartial anymore, which is kind of against the Scion rulebook. Meanwhile, in the Empire, Elidibus, yeah, remember him, meets with the current Emperor, Varys Zosgalvis. Elidibus removes his mask and the Emperor is shocked to find out whose face is under it. Wonder who that could be. Still elsewhere, it turns out that both Gosetsu and Yotsuyu had survived. Somehow, though the latter is still unconscious. And that's the end of base Stormblood. Just like with every other expansion to the game, base Stormblood was followed up by a series of patch quests and additional content. It's your usual, the patch quests continue the story and bridge the gap between this expansion and the next. It has a new 8-man raid focused on the Omega weapon and what it's been up to since its clash with Shinryu, and a new 24-man alliance raid that centers around Ivalice. It's also the first expansion that introduced ultimate raids, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, super beefed up runs based off of major antagonists you've defeated before. Stormblood added in one based off of the Coils of Bahamut and later on another based off of the Ultima weapon. Not that I went and did any of them, maybe some other time. Anyway, story-wise, most everyone is currently focusing on rebuilding Ala Mhigan. Several things happen at once. Lys is forming a council to discuss where to go from here. Myself and another adventurer, Ehrenwald, find some buried treasure which can help fund the rebuilding. And most importantly, word spread throughout the region that Fordola was imprisoned for her crimes instead of executed, and the citizens are ready to riot. Rhalgr is outside trying to calm everyone down. The thing is, Fordola's Echo, being a knockoff, comes with its own set of bugs. She can't control when and whose past she looks into, so it's very likely that she has to sit in that cell and experience everything the angry rioters outside are experiencing. Hey, karma's a bitch. But more importantly, when the Warrior of Light and Ehrenwald come to visit, we both end up seeing each other's memories. Fordola gets to see all the shit I've been through, and I get to see what she's been through. Fordola's parents sided with the Empire when they took over. Their goal was attempting to foster a sense of collaboration between the two sides, so she was treated like a traitor by her fellow Ala Mhigans, and of course the Empire didn't like her either because she was Eorzean. All of this, of course, being stuff beyond her control, decided before she was even born. One day, as the family is walking through town, an angry mob starts throwing stones at Fordola. Fordola's parents catch up to her, and the father dies while shielding her from the stones. Some Imperial soldiers were keeping watch at the time, but intervening on any matters between Ala Mhigans was completely optional, so they didn't help either. And I'm sure this was just one of many altercations Fordola and her family had with other Ala Mhigans. Many years pass. Fordola and a handful of others who I can only assume had a similar upbringing to her decide to join the Empire's ranks as the Crania Lupi, or Skulls as the Ala Mhigans would begin to call them, despite her mom's objections to the idea. One thing worth noting is on that day she says, "We'll do whatever it takes to be free," only for us to find out that she had to go as far as killing her own friends to try and achieve this the way they had planned. Just found that a bit interesting in a morbidly fucked up kind of way. Once again, it by no means justifies any of the horrible things she's done up to this point, but it does give you a clear understanding of how she got here. Just like with Yotsuyu, Fordola was unfortunately exposed to the worst of what her own had to offer, to the point where she viewed the Empire as the lesser of the two evils. Once Fordola, albeit unintentionally, finishes sampling my memories, she comments on how hard my life is as well and wonders how I got through it all. She probably saw me doing all of those A Realm Reborn filler quests and concluded that my suffering was even worse. Anyway, in other news, Nanamo calls me over to Ul'dah. She wants me to escort her around the region so she can get a more accurate understanding of Ul'dah's issues. And she's doing this because she senses that Rhalgr would rather remain in Ala Mhigan, his home. So she wants to prepare herself to be a suitable leader so that she can fully relieve him of his duties. Rhalgr objects at first but eventually agrees, happy to finally be able to remain in his home. Lys holds her summit to discuss other matters pertaining to Ala Mhigan. Now, Lys has never been the brightest crystal on the Aethernet. It was a little hard to tell because most of her important roles throughout the game so far have been combat related, but this is where she really hits a new low and pulls one of the most galaxy-brained moves in the entire game so far. So she's holding the summit, right? The Quelliana want to join. Yeah, the same tribe of Anata that summoned Lakshmi. Everyone knows this. And Lys, being a former Scion, should know damn well that most, if not all of them, are tempered and literally, canonically, cannot be reasoned with. They explain this very clearly in A Realm Reborn that once someone gets tempered, they're as good as gone. Everything they do from that point forward is done with the ulterior motive of serving their respective primal. They are perma-cultists. But sure, let's invite them. What's the worst that could happen, right? They're permitted to join and have a voice as long as they don't bring any crystals with them to try and summon, and we beef up the security too, just in case. So the summit begins, but things quickly go south when the Quelliana representative declares that we've been bamboozled. Apparently, they had already snuck some crystals in through the castle's waterways. I would assume maybe a couple of days before. Additionally, some Ala Mhigan soldiers were already tempered, so they were helping out undercover too. Wow, the fanatics had a plan B. Who could have seen that coming? I know Papalima was down there drilling a whole tunnel in his grave. Now thankfully myself and Ehrenwald are both there and we have the anti-primal spray, so we managed to protect everyone else from getting tempered. Having to juggle that along with fighting Sri Lakshmi herself wasn't easy though, and things could have gotten real ugly if Lise hadn't slipped away and busted Fordola out of prison to come help us. With our combined echoes, we managed to defeat Lakshmi once again. So Ul'dah and Ala Mhigo strike a mutually beneficial business deal to help rebuild Ala Mhigo, as well as help the displaced refugees. And Raoban's son, Pipin, will be taking over Raoban's old duties, namely his position as General of the Immortal Flames and his vacant seat on the Syndicate. Around this time, not exactly at the moment I'm narrating, but I couldn't really squeeze this in anywhere else without completely throwing off the flow of the video, you can go off the beaten path and engage in a string of side quests that unlock 3 extra trials, similar to how you did Ramu, Leviathan, and Shiva in A Realm Reborn, or the Warring Triad in Heavensward. This time, the 3 trials are related to the 4 lords. If that doesn't add up numerically, it's because one of them is fought in a normal dungeon. But yes, they are directly based off of the 4 cardinal beasts from Chinese mythology: Genbu, Black Tortoise of the North, Byakko, the White Tiger of the West, Suzaku, the Vermilion Bird of the South, and Seiryu, the Azure Dragon of the East. Though Seiryu is depicted as a snake in this game instead of a dragon. Still a reptile. Roll with it. I've noticed this pattern with every segment of the game so far. They introduce a few trials in the base game, usually primals corresponding to different Final Fantasy summons, have a really big one be the final boss, like Knights of the Round in Heavensward, or Shinryu in this expansion, then progressively add a few more in the patches. Stormblood in particular had a bunch that were based off of Eastern deities, which I guess makes a lot of sense. I'm just wondering, what are they going to do about this from Shadowbringers onwards, cause they're kind of running out of summons to use. Sorbin, yeah, remember him, grabs my attention and asks me for some help, promising a hefty reward if we see it through to the end. This really attracts my character, and especially Tataru, since she's looking to make back the money that Alphino just spent buying back Gosetsu's katana from a merchant in the city. We make our way down and find ourselves inside of a temple where Genbu introduces himself. He asks us to help him defeat Koryu, who is another non-primal deity who's been causing issues lately. In the past, a man named Tenzin had worked together with the 4 lords to seal Koryu away, but it's been a while now. The seal that they used on Koryu is weakening, and he's getting a bit cranky. Another thing you need to know, each of the lord's souls has 2 energies. The Aramitama, which is their animalistic primal energy, see what I did there, and their Nigitama, which is their calmer state. Over the years, the other 3 lords, because you just fought Genbu on your way in, have had an excess buildup of Aramitama, so you're tasked with fighting each of them, which will allow each deity to release their Aramitama in a safer, healthier way, I guess, so they don't succumb to it and go berserk. Because if that happens, then they're a lost cause. You do this for each of them, learning a bit more about their past and how they met Tenzin each time. Koryu's seal breaks, but by that point the 4 lords are back to their normal state and ready to fight. I was actually kind of disappointed the fight with Koryu wasn't playable. Anyway, we managed to pull through, though at a cost. Genbu died during the fight, but midway through, Sorbin offered up his own body as Genbu's new vessel. With the switch out completed and extra help from Tenzin's ghost, we managed to defeat Koryu. Sorbin becomes his old self again, but basically becomes the new Genbu, though the previous Genbu will be telepathically training him before he fades away. And that's the 4 lords in a nutshell. Now back to your regularly scheduled MSQ. Word gets around that Gosetsu and Yotsuyu are still alive and were seen in Kugane. We find them. We also notice that Yotsuyu is a little nicer than we're used to. Gosetsu explains that Yotsuyu, or just Suyu as he now calls her, lost her memory when the castle collapsed. I guess a chunk of ceiling hit her really hard in the head. Nobody really believes that, and it does sound a bit too convenient given the circumstances, but we take her in to see Hien and ask for his take on the situation. Hien doesn't seem too thrilled about this either, but decides to hold off on doing anything drastic for the time being, telling us to just make sure she stays out of the public eye. Understandably so. Memories or not, absolutely no one in Doma would be very happy if they bumped into her outside. An Imperial airship shows up right around that moment, but they signal that they come in peace and just want to talk. The Imperial who was aboard the ship was actually Yotsuyu's brother, Asahi, the same guy who she said their parents favored and was sent to the Empire to study. Asahi wanted to negotiate peace with Doma, explaining that he's part of a political party that, like the rest of the Empire, wants to get rid of the icons, but his party seeks to do it in a less forceful manner. He'd like to get a feel for Doma and try to have both nations talk things over. Asahi seems like a nice enough guy. He wants to exchange prisoners. The Empire will give back the Domans they've captured if we give them Yotsuyu back. I guess in the event she did get her memories back, the Empire didn't just want her wandering around unchecked. Asahi does attempt to jog Yotsuyu's memory, but to no avail. Asahi and his group are about to head out, but before they do that, he pulls me over to the side to talk for a bit. You remember how I talked about the Zenos glazing protocol before? Well, this guy wrote the goddamn source code. This man is the Olympic gold medalist of Zenos meat writing, and right now he is very salty because I killed his idol.
My lord was destined to lead us unto a glorious new age. Your light is nothing to his radiance.
Technically, he killed himself, but details. Unfortunately, I can't just cut him down on the spot since it would be very bad for optics, but I do head back and tell Hien what's really going on here. Oh, also, speaking of Zenos, he's still alive. Kinda. I'll explain later. Now, turning our attention back to Gosetsu for a second, don't let his size fool you. He may look like he can take a hit from an Imperial airship and shrug it off, but he's actually pretty damn old, and his injuries at the castle have only worsened his situation, so Tsuyu is taking care of him. For now. Gosetsu mentions to us that he wouldn't mind a persimmon, but unbeknownst to him, Tsuyu slips out to get him one from the market. By the time we find her, so have some of the citizens, and they're not happy. Between Hien explaining things and Tsuyu begging for forgiveness, despite not remembering her past, we somehow manage to convince them to leave her alone. Well, it was more likely that Hien had the final say in how she's dealt with. Yeah, probably that. We later meet up with Asahi to complete the prisoner exchange, among them being Yotsuyu's parents, who are actually angry about the exchange because they prefer their life in the Empire over going back to Doma, and this causes Tsuyu to finally remember the first two letters of her name. Yotsuyu is back. Her parents find her and she kills them, deserved by the way, because the first thing her mom and dad did after they caught her wandering out was scold her for forcing them to leave the Empire and suggesting that she go right back to the brothel to help make ends meet. So yeah, nothing of value was lost there. We confront Yotsuyu and Asahi inside of the nearby military base. Asahi had brought over a bunch of containers, and initially he said they were supplies to help the soon-to-be-released Domans get their lives back on track. However, they actually contained a whole bunch of crystals, which Yotsuyu is now using to summon a primal. Pretty similar to how Izael summoned Shiva by using her own body as the vessel for the primal. And the way Asahi plans to spin this is that a Doman citizen, because no one else knows she got her memory back, summoned a primal at the 11th hour, so now the deal is off. Pretty devious. The guy's a little bitch, but he's not stupid, I'll give him that. One rather masochistic trial later, Tsukuyomi is defeated, but before anyone can catch their breath, Asahi shows up once again. He shoots her, and then shoots her again, just to make sure she's dead. It turns out he resented Yotsuyu as well. He hated that Zenos picked her to govern Doma instead of him. Remember what I told you about that glazing?
The power he bestowed upon her. I should have been the one to govern Doma. I would have repaid his faith. No one alive loves him more than I! Instead, this harlot betrayed his trust. Useless piece of filth! Worthless whore!
You're talking to the Grand Master right here. But as this man continues gloating, rubbing in how he took us all for a ride, and pulling off some pretty meme-worthy faces to boot, he doesn't notice Yotsuyu barely clinging on below him, readying two ethereal swords that were just waiting to pierce that fragile little ribcage of his. Gotcha. With Yotsuyu finally feeling satisfied, as Asahi was the last remaining person she really wanted revenge on, they both die. It's bittersweet. Everyone, Gosetsu especially, feels torn. Do we celebrate the fall of Yotsuyu, or mourn the death of Tsuyu. Gosetsu basically retires after this, and he's headed out on a pilgrimage to pray for lost souls. Also, it's revealed through the echo that Zenos was the one who put Asahi up to all of this. Of course. Asahi's second-in-command, Maxima, who was unaware of Asahi and Zenos' ulterior motives, still wanted to attempt a genuine reconciliation between the Empire and the other nations. He also confirms to everyone that Zenos is still alive, and Alphino asks Maxima if he can ride with him back to the Empire. He suspects Asians might be behind some of this. And they are. The characters suspect this, but it's basically confirmed to the player. Elidibus took Zenos' body as his new host, and, for some reason, Zenos is now wearing the body of a random resistance soldier, as is showcased when said soldier takes out a katana and makes quick work of his own superior. As Maxima's crew is headed back to the Empire, they're attacked by some other Imperial ships. Orders from Zenos himself, and they crash. Everyone survives, but now they're stranded in a desert known as the Burn. They meet a mysterious Garlean man who calls himself Shadowhunter. He's also on the lookout for Asians, so Alphino and company follow him. Due to the Burn being devoid of any aether, Alphino couldn't contact any of the others, so naturally we're all getting a bit worried. We manage to find out that Alphino is stuck in the Burn, and Hien offers his help as well. We don't find him, but we do find the remains of the ship. We head back because words of Zenos being alive, as well as the possibility of Astian mischief, has spread to the other city-states. The Empire is more than likely going to launch more attacks, but then we find out that the Burn is the same area where the Alags constructed Azi's Law, the floating continent you visited back in Heavensward. We conclude that maybe they left some technology behind that could help, but we need a power source to use any of it. Hien says we can find an artifact that will accomplish this at the Azim Step. The thing is, it has some religious significance, so we won't be able to just take it without the Zayla's approval. After a scrimmage with the leaders of the Dothral and Azim tribes, we finally get permission to use the item, and both tribes, as well as the Mole, whom we'd had helped the last time we visited, form an official alliance with Doma. But not before Y'shtola drops the most brutal line in the entire game.
In battle, you shone with all the majesty of the full moon's light. Your healing touch, the embodiment of the Dusk Mother's love. Long had I wondered if my Nama might not be a woman of the steppe. Beholding you, I am all but certain. Now, look into my eyes. Could it be? Could you be?
I am. Not interested, little son. Try again when you've become a man.
That near-death experience with Zenos really changed her, huh? So we regroup once again to discuss how we're gonna deal with the Empire. While we're talking things over, we're hit with a sudden... I'm not even sure what to call it. I start hearing voices that are warning me to change history, otherwise Light's gonna consume everything. It actually sounds eerily similar to what the Warriors of Darkness were talking about all the way back in Heavensward. Interesting. Everyone wakes up, except for Thancred. He's now in a permanent coma. We rush back to Revenant's Toll to ask Urianger if he has any idea what's going on, only for the magic PSA to knock out him and Y'shtola too. Meanwhile, at the Imperial capital, Elidibus, is having a chat with the Emperor. Okay, for the sake of simplicity, while Elidibus is wearing Zenos' skin, we'll call him Zelidibus, and Zenos in his current state is Enos. Got it? Good. Zelidibus and Enos. Okay, now pay close attention because this next part is super important. Zelidibus leaves and another voice in the room addresses the Emperor. This is Solus Van Galvis, the Emperor's grandfather and the founder of the entire Garlean Empire, matter of fact. But how is he still alive? Isn't his death the reason Varys is currently sitting on the throne now, you may ask? Well, it turns out Solus was an Asian the whole time, which means the entire Garlean Empire, down to its core, was founded by an Asian to further their own agenda. While I was streaming this, I didn't quite understand the gravity of this revelation in the moment, but you know, after like a couple of days, given some time to let it simmer, this is pretty fucking big. Anyway, speaking of the Empire, things aren't looking too good over there either. They've developed some new technology to make their conquest a lot less troublesome, among these being a special gas called the Black Rose. It can insta-kill entire armies in record time. And, once again, the Imperials are making a beeline for Ala Mhigan. Alisaie and I are tasked with updating Hien on what's going on, so back to Doma we go. On the way there, we're hit with the PSA again, but neither of us collapse. That's because it claimed Alpha No this time, but we don't know that yet. We go to the burn to test out our new Allagan barrier, which Hien has decided to name Seryu's Wall. Now it's ready for any attacks from the Empire. We bump into Shadowhunter, who's carrying an unconscious Alpha No, but that's when I start to realize that this guy Shadowhunter seems familiar. And then it hit me, both canonically in-game as well as in real life.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
This is Gaius Van Baelsar. He survived our battle during A Realm Reborn and now he hunts Ascians instead. Understandably so. They finessed him so badly it's kinda funny looking back. Gaius starts explaining how the Ascian hierarchy works. Ascians with black masks work for the red masked ones, so basically all of the ones we've encountered so far. And additionally, amongst the red masks, the ones who come from the source are ranked higher than the ones who come from the shards. Remember how Minfilia explained that? How our world is the source, but there's 13 other ones as well? Yeah, that. Now fortunately, Gaius and Alpha No had managed to stall production of the Black Rose before the latter collapsed, so that buys us a little bit more time. With the protection of Seryu's Wall at their disposal, Hien can afford to contribute more of his forces to the upcoming battle. Shortly afterwards, we request a meeting with Emperor Varys to hopefully negotiate an outcome that might involve just a little less scrapping. At first, things aren't looking so good. The Emperor has a rebuttal to almost all of the Eorzean Alliance's claims. After the intermission though, we do get a couple of nuggets. Varys reveals that he shares his grandfather's goal of collapsing the shards back into the source to create a utopia, though that would, in the process, kill everyone residing in those shards as well, because remember, each shard is essentially like its own dimension. And then he also let slip that his grandfather is an Ascian. So negotiations are over. Looks like we're gonna have to fight our way through this one, as usual. War breaks out not too long afterwards, and at first we're doing pretty good, until Alisaie is the next and I believe final major scion besides myself to get PSA'd. I take her back to Revenant's Toll, but I don't get to rest there for long. I'm needed again on the battlefield. Turns out Zelidibus had arrived and he's doing what his host did best, racking up kills. Hien, Yugiri, and Lys, I guess Lys couldn't have picked a better time to quit the Scions, huh? All team up to distract Zelidibus and buy some time for the storm that was approaching. Me. There's your obligatory Virgil joke. I finally get there and the children step down so the two grown-ups can talk, with our swords. It's a pretty heated battle, and unfortunately just as things are coming to a head, I get PSA'd one more time. This time, however, I actually get to meet the guy who's been spam calling me for the past few hours, and he reminds me, once again, that if I don't hear him out, the world is doomed, regardless of what happens during the war. He says he'll be waiting for me in the Crystal Tower. Yeah, the Alliance raid spot, the place that was teeming with Final Fantasy III references? Yep, next stop. By the way, Estinian made yet another cameo appearance and bailed me out at the last second before Zelidibus could kill me, so that's why I'm still here, in this cool-ass new apartment. Aren't you proud of me? I'm moving up in life. I can't believe I got my own place in FF14 before doing the same in real life. The 8-man raids, as I said before, are focused on the Omega weapon. While we were busy with Ala Mhigan and Doma, Omega spawned this alternate space known as the Deltascape. It's trying to discover who's the most powerful being, and to do this it's pulling several test subjects from across the multiverse, you included. This is basically just a way to set up some raid battles against enemies from other Final Fantasy games, namely 5, 6, and 1, in that order. You then face off against Omega itself. It's a neat little story about ambition, friendship, the ins and outs of existing, amongst other things. The Alliance raid for this expansion is centered around Ivalice, namely Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy XII. I wish I could give some more in-depth insight to these, but just my luck, I haven't played either one of them. It sort of functions the way Final Fantasy cameos do in Kingdom Hearts. Characters from Tactics and 12 appear in this questline, but they're different people from their originals. They share the same name and physical appearance, but they're adapted to fit the 14 universe. It's them, but also not them. Same goes for most of the bosses. Anyway, The stage is set for the next expansion. The Eorzean Alliance is fighting the Garlean Empire, the Scions are out of commission, Zenos is looking for his original body, and I've got a date with a mysterious hooded dude in the Crystal Tower. Looking forward to what happens next. It seems Shadowbringers is the fan favorite of all the expansions, and I like the direction that I think they're about to take the story in, so yeah, definitely look forward to that in another billion years when I get around to covering it. For now though, that will be the end of this video. So do leave a like if you enjoyed it, sub to the channel if you haven't already. A special thanks to all channel members for your continued support, it's much appreciated, and I will see you all again, well, I'm not even gonna lie about it. I don't know if I'll see you soon, but whenever I put the next video up, you'll see it. So hang tight, it'll come one day, I guess.